There is now an AI model you can ask the question every other model pretends not to understand. No lecture, no safety paragraph, no tiny corporate voice appearing in the middle of your prompt to tell you it cannot help with that. Just a model that answers. It is called Venice Uncensored, and the shocking part is not that it exists. The shocking part is that it is not some hidden Discord bot, some broken jailbreak, or a sketchy rapper pretending to be a breakthrough. It is a real text model. It is on Hugging Face. It has an API. It has a 100K context version. It is OpenAI SDK compatible. And the whole pitch is basically this. What if your AI stopped acting like a nervous customer support intern and started acting like software again? Because that is the thing most people are tired of. Not safety, not policy, not the 1,000-word internet argument around alignment. People are tired of asking a direct question and getting a corporate press release back. They are tired of the model refusing normal research. They are tired of the model softening every opinion until it sounds like a LinkedIn apology. They are tired of writing around the tool instead of using the tool. Venice Uncensored is interesting because it flips the default. The normal AI product says, convince me I'm allowed to answer. This one says, tell me what you want. That sounds small. It is not small. That is the entire power dynamic changing. Hey, don't forget to like and subscribe for more like this. Now back to the video. Most people think AI models are annoying because they are too careful. That is not quite right. They are annoying because the refusal layer has become part of the product. You're not just talking to a model, you're talking to a model, a policy system, a brand team, a legal department, a moderation filter, and a customer support script all squeezed into the same chat box. That is why the answers feel weird. You ask for something direct, the model understands it, you know it understands it, the model knows it understands it. Then it does the little dance, it says it cannot assist, it offers a safer alternative, it gives you a classroom version of the thing you asked for. And suddenly you are not using an intelligence tool, you're negotiating with a vending machine. This is where uncensored models become interesting. Not because they are magic, not because they are smarter than everything else, because they remove one of the most irritating layers between intent and output. The model is still just a model. It can still be wrong, it can still hallucinate, it can still write nonsense with absolute confidence, but it does not keep stopping the conversation to ask whether your question is emotionally convenient for a software company. That is the actual sell. Less friction, less theater, more direct output. If you write, it can write in the voice you actually asked for. If you research, it can follow the uncomfortable branch of the topic. If you brainstorm, it does not keep filing the sharpest ideas down into harmless mush. If you build characters, it does not suddenly behave like a school firewall. And if you're a developer, the important part is that you can put that behavior behind an API. That is where it stops being a novelty and starts being a tool. Venice Uncensored is a model from Venice AI, built with the Dolphin AI team. The public model card says it is based on Mistral Small 24 billion Instruct and Dolphin Mistral 24 billion Venice Edition. So we are not talking about a tiny toy model. We are talking about a 24 billion parameter model designed for direct instruction following. The model card describes it with 3 words that matter: steerable, private, unrestricted. Steerable means the system prompt matters. You set the behavior, you decide the voice, you decide how obedient, blunt, formal, creative, technical, strange, dry, aggressive, or careful the assistant should be. That is very different from the normal chat product. With most assistants, you can write a system prompt, but you're still fighting a deeper system prompt you cannot see. The visible prompt is yours, the invisible one belongs to the company, and when those two disagree, the invisible one wins. Venice Uncensored is pitched as the opposite. The model card says there is no hard-code moralizing alignment and that the model relies on you to define how it should behave. That is the important sentence. No hard-coded babysitter, no hidden personality that keeps taking the wheel, no assistant suddenly turning into a pamphlet because you touched the wrong topic. Private means Venice is selling this as a privacy-first AI product. On the consumer side, the uncensored page says there is a free plan with 10 text prompts per day and a paid plan at $18 per month. On the developer side, Venice says the API is compatible with OpenAI style tooling. That means you do not need to rebuild your entire stack just to try it. Change the base URL, swap the model name, send the request. That is exactly how a weird idea becomes easy to test. And unrestricted means the point is not to make the model polite. The point is to make it answer. The exciting part is not the word uncensored. That word is loud, but it can also be vague. The exciting part is control. Most AI products sell intelligence, but rent you permission. You pay for the model. You pay for the context window. You pay for the tool calls. You pay for the image generator. You pay for the API. Then, after all that, the product still decides which parts of the tool you're allowed to touch. That is the part that feels broken. Imagine buying a compiler that refuses to compile code because the project sounds too intense. Imagine a database that returns a paragraph about responsible querying instead of the rows. Imagine a shell that says it would rather discuss general best practices. That is what modern AI sometimes feels like. The tool is there, the capability is there, the interface is there, but the product keeps interrupting itself. An uncensored model changes the vibe because the default assumption is different. The normal model starts with caution and makes you earn directness. This starts with directness and lets you add caution if you want it. That matters for creative work, it matters for roleplay, it matters for fiction, it matters for blunt feedback, it matters for private brainstorming, it matters for competitive research, it matters for questions where the whole point is that the answer might be awkward. And it really matters for developers building products where the AI should follow the user's rules, not the platform's personality. Because once the model is available through an API, this is not just a chat window, it is a component. You can put it inside a writing app, you can put it inside a local research tool, you can put it inside a private assistant. You can put it inside an agent that has a very specific job and a very specific tone. You can build something that does not feel like every other assistant with a different logo. That is a practical unlock. The model stops being a corporate character. It becomes programmable behavior. The number that makes this more than a spicy chatbot is 128K. Venice lists Venice Uncensored 1.2 with a 128K context window. That is the difference between asking a forbidden little question and actually giving the model a serious pile of material. 128K context means you can feed it long documents, long chats, research dumps, source files, transcripts, drafts, notes, examples of the tone you want, examples of the tone you do not want, and then you can ask for the output without the model constantly trying to sand off the parts that made the source material useful in the first place. That is where uncensored stops being a gimmick. For a developer context is leverage. A small prompt gives you a generic answer. A long context gives you an answer shaped by your actual situation. So if you're building a private writing workflow, you can give it a full project folder. If you're building a research assistant, you can give it the messy sources. If you're building a character bot, you can give it the lore, the constraints, the voice, the relationship, the rules, and the tone. If you're building an internal tool, you can give it the whole policy or spec and make it answer in the style your users need. And because the model is designed to be steerable, the system prompt becomes the steering wheel instead of a polite suggestion taped to the dashboard. That is what developers should pay attention to. Not just whether it says yes to spicy prompts, whether it lets your app define the assistant, that is much more valuable. The fun part is uncensored. The business part is control. Venice is not only selling a single model page, it is selling a private AI platform. Text, images, video, audio code, search, document parsing, API access that matters because uncensored chat by itself is easy to dismiss. People hear it and think fine, a chatbot with fewer refusals. Interesting for one night, then what? The bigger story is when uncensored output becomes part of a stack. Venice says its API supports text generation, image generation, audio, video, music, embeddings, and developer tools like web search and document parsing. That turns a product into a toolbox. You can imagine a private research agent that searches, scrapes, reads, and writes without turning every edgy source into a beige summary. You can imagine a fiction tool that lets the user set the tone instead of forcing every story into the same safe voice. You can imagine a code assistant that gives blunt security feedback without sounding like it is afraid of the word exploit. You can imagine a personal assistant that answers private questions without training a profile for some ad network. And you can imagine a whole category of apps where the selling point is not a smarter model. The selling point is that the model finally gets out of the way. That is a very different lane from ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and Copilot. Those products are trying to be trusted mainstream assistants. Venice is trying to be the place where the user is in charge. That is a sharper pitch, and sharp pitches travel. The privacy side is not some boring checkbox here. It is part of the reason the product feels dangerous in the good way. If the whole promise is ask anything, then the next question is obvious. Who sees the anything? That is where Venice is leaning hard. Their docs describe 4 privacy tiers: anonymized, private, TEE, 2EE. Private means zero data retention on Venice-hosted open source models. TE means the model runs inside a hardware-secured enclave, and Venice says it cannot access the computation. E2EE means prompts are encrypted before they are sent, and only the secure enclave can decrypt them. Whether you personally trust every part of that stack is a separate question. But the product direction is obvious. They are not just saying the model will answer, they are saying the model will answer without turning your prompt history into someone else's dataset. That combination is why this gets interesting. Uncensored without privacy is messy. Privacy without direct answers is boring. Put them together and you get a very different kind of AI product. One where the pitch is not, come be productive inside our approved playground. The pitch is bring the question you would not put into the normal chat box. That is flabbergasting because it sounds like the thing everyone quietly wants, but most companies are terrified to sell directly. A powerful AI that does not act like it owns the conversation. For this channel, the API is the real reason to care. A web app can be cool, a chat product can be fun, but an API is where developers start asking dangerous product questions. What can I build with this? What existing app becomes better if the assistant stops refusing normal edge cases? What workflow becomes smoother if the model follows the system prompt instead of negotiating with it? What kind of private tool can I build if I do not need to send everything through the same handful of mainstream assistants? Venice says the API is OpenAI compatible. That phrase is boring until you realize what it means. It means a lot of existing code can point at Venice with small changes. It means agents, wrappers, internal tools, chat interfaces, and prototypes do not need a completely new mental model. It means the barrier to testing is low, and low friction matters more than almost anything in developer tools. The best technology does not always win. The thing that is easiest to try often gets the first real shot. If you can take a tool that already speaks OpenAI style requests and route it toward an uncensored private model, that is not a weekend curiosity. That is an experiment a developer can actually run. And that is how niches become markets. First, one person builds a private assistant, then someone builds a roleplay app, then someone builds a research workflow, then someone builds a code review bot, then someone builds an agent that uses Venice for the parts where mainstream models keep freezing. Suddenly, the uncensored model is not the app. It is the engine under a bunch of apps. That is when this becomes bigger than the word uncensored. Now, there is one practical catch, and it is not the moral one. Nobody clicked this to hear a sermon. The catch is capability. An uncensored model is not automatically a frontier model. Venice Uncensored being more direct does not mean it beats Claude, Opus, GPT, Gemini, Grok, or the biggest reasoning models at everything. It probably will not. If you need the strongest possible long horizon coding agent, you still compare models. If you need deep math, you still compare models. If you need extremely reliable factual answers, you still verify. If you need production output, you still test. Uncensored is not a benchmark score. It is a behavior profile. That distinction matters. The win is not that Venice Uncensored is suddenly the smartest model in the world. The win is that it may be the least annoying model for certain jobs, and for a lot of real tasks, least annoying is a serious advantage. If the strongest model says no, and the slightly weaker model gives you a useful first draft, the weaker model may be the better tool. If the giant model keeps rewriting your prompt into something bland, and the smaller model preserves the sharpness, the smaller model may produce the better result. If the mainstream assistant refuses the messy part of the problem, and the uncensored model at least engages with it, that changes which tool you reach for. That is the category. Not best at everything, best when the refusal layer is the thing ruining the task. Big AI companies have a difficult problem. They want everyone to use their models for everything, but they also need those models to behave like product a giant company can put on a billboard. That creates a gap. Not a small gap, a huge one. There are questions users want to ask privately. There are characters users want to write. There are topics users want explored without a lecture. There are security ideas developers want discussed plainly. There are business comparisons people want in a brutal tone. There are creative directions that mainstream assistants flatten because the product is optimized for broad acceptability. That leaves space for another kind of model. Not the assistant for everyone. The assistant for the person who knows what they want and does not want to be managed. That is why this category is not going away. Every time a mainstream model refuses a normal request, it advertises the alternative. Every time a user has to rewrite a prompt 5 times to avoid triggering a useless refusal, it trains them to search for something else. Every time an AI tool sounds more like corporate risk management than software, it makes uncensored models more attractive. The funny thing is that big AI taught people to expect magic. Now users are discovering the magic comes with a chaperone. Uncensored models are the backlash, not as a political movement, not as an internet drama, as product demand. People want the model to answer. That is it. The smartest way to think about Venice Uncensored is not as your only model. Think of it as the model you route to when the normal assistant becomes the bottleneck. Use the frontier model when you need maximum reasoning. Use the coding model when you need repo work. Use the cheap model when you need scale. Use the uncensored model when you need directness, tone control, private exploration, or output the mainstream assistant keeps refusing to touch. That is a clean role, and it is probably where this kind of model fits best. A blunt second opinion, a private drafting room, a character engine. A research assistant for uncomfortable topics, a brainstorming tool that does not sand down the best idea, a developer component for apps where the user's prompt should actually be the authority. That last one is the most interesting, because a lot of AI apps right now feel the same. Different logo, same assistant voice, different pricing page, same refusal patterns, different model picker, same beige output. An uncensored, steerable model lets developers build something with a more specific personality. That is what the market needs. Not one more polite text box, not one more assistant that says it is here to help and then immediately refuses the interesting part. Tools with edges, tools with taste, tools that let the user decide the job. Venice Uncensored is not exciting because it is reckless. It is exciting because it brings back a very old idea. The computer does what you tell it to do. This is part of a bigger shift in AI. For the last few years, the mainstream story has been that AI gets more powerful, more expensive, and more controlled. At the same time, bigger models, bigger subscriptions, bigger context windows, bigger policy layers, bigger platforms. That is one future. But open models, local models, private APIs, and uncensored variants are pushing in the other direction. Smaller teams, sharper products, more user control, more routing, more model choice, more weirdness, and weirdness matters. The early internet was not exciting because every website sounded approved. It was exciting because people could build strange, specific, useful things without asking permission from the same 5 companies. AI has been drifting in the opposite direction. One chat box, one assistant voice, one approved style, one refusal pattern, one model provider sitting between the user and the output. Uncensored models break that pattern. They are not always better, they are not always smarter, they are definitely not always polished. But they are important because they remind everyone that AI does not have to be one personality controlled from the cloud. It can be a tool, it can be a component, it can be private, it can be weird, it can answer, and once users get a taste of that, the normal assistant starts to feel different, not safe, smaller, more managed, more rented, less yours. That is the real threat. Not that everyone switches overnight, that people realize the refusal layer was optional. So the reason Venice Uncensored is worth paying attention to is simple. It takes the most frustrating part of mainstream AI and makes it the enemy. No moralizing refusals, no hidden assistant personality trying to tame the prompt, no pretending the model did not understand what you meant, just a steerable private model that is built to answer directly. That does not make it the best model in the world. It makes it one of the most interesting because for a huge number of users, the problem is not that AI is too weak, the problem is that AI keeps getting in its own way. Venice Uncensored is a bet that people do not want a smarter hall monitor. They want a tool, and if that bet is right, this category is going to get much bigger. The mainstream assistants can keep the polished voice, they can keep the careful paragraphs, they can keep the little refusal dance, but there's now a real model with a real API saying the quiet part out loud, ask anything. And for a lot of people, that is the only feature that matters.